So, uh, hello everyone, my name's Devika. I'm going to be teaching you Git, I hope, today. Some of you, I believe, have already sat through this training last week, where we did actually have quite a bit more time to do everything. So just so you know, we probably won't cover everything today, but everything is recorded. All the materials are available on Teams, and I'll point that out to you in just a moment. And we will figure our way through this. Okay, so just to start housekeeping, I mentioned that the Mark Hansen talk, that link is still in the chat. I can send it again if we need it, but that's at 4. So just so you know, I'm going to aim to have us out of here by 3:55 so that everybody who wants to can get onto that call on time. Number 2, Teams. So last week when we did this training, we did have quite a lot of questions and technical issues. And so in anticipation of that, I just want to quickly show you guys, for those of you who have access to Teams, we are going to ask you to sort of log all technical issues and questions here in all miscellaneous. Neil and Baiwan, who are on the chat now, they are from our infrastructure team here in UVA, and they will be able to respond to your questions and make sure every question gets covered. And also, it's nice to have the questions there just in case anyone in the future is going back and looking at what questions were already asked. They can see sometimes some of the answers already, which is really helpful. So just again, so that's under Teams, under the all miscellaneous channel, under posts, that's where you're going to see that chat of questions. The other place I want to point you to is the all training channel, where if you go to files, you can see a trainings materials including recordings folder. If you click into that, the 2020 May 28th folder has the intro to Git materials, which includes the 2 recordings from last week, the PowerPoint that I'm going to show you today, and a a link to a LearnR app, which I will show you momentarily. The other thing that's in here that's really helpful is the documentation template. And let me stop share real quick and share. Yes, this one. Here you go. This is the documentation template. You can also find that under the all training folder. And just as a quick guide, we'll talk about how this will play out in your week. But what we're learning today, the tool we're learning today is for documentation. And so this documentation template just helps us keep track of, you know, are we keeping track of what we're working on every week, and are there things we can do to improve our documentation? I've put in this tab here just so that specifically for the graduate students, they can check in with their undergraduates and any other team members to make sure that the code that's coming in every week is clean and whatnot, but this is sort of an informal just for your own internal record keeping. The tab that we do care about here, and the one that we will ask from you at the end of the summer, is this, the documentation tab. And you'll see here a sort of, you know, hopefully a spreadsheet of meta information about the code that you write this summer, right? So under phase, you know, you have a script, you've written this import Factiva script. You're going to talk about what phase of the data science framework is that really aligned with? Is it ingesting data, manipulating data, modeling, or some kind of visualization? At a high level, what data set are you working with? Under input, that's going to be what is the actual path to any data sets that are required to get that script to run. And the run order. So in the case of, you know, this particular example, I've got 3 scripts for importing data that don't have any previous inputs required, right? But by the time I get to this transform Factiva script, that actually requires the output of this first script, right? So in this first script, I'm generating this data set called factiva.rda. That becomes the input for this next script, transform Factiva. So this one's run order could be 1, and this one's would be 2. We also put in a column for language in case teams are working in multi-language teams. I know there's some people who are going to be working in Python. I know Bayawan is ever a fan of Julia. So in case you're in that situation where you have multiple languages, it might be helpful to keep track of that. And then the last thing here, just any notes about those scripts. And one thing that you'll see here, you will hopefully not need this. Most of you, I don't think will need this. But if, for some reason you're working with a really big data set or a really computationally expensive process or method, it may be worth, if you are running into runtime errors, it might be worth noting what the setup was for your Ravana session when you actually were running that script. So hours, cores, gigabytes, and whether or not you needed to use a Slurm process, or a Slurm job, I believe is the terminology. So just a quick intro there on that. And you can, again, find that in Teams. If you are not on Teams yet, definitely, Joel's email is in the chat. It's the jt9sz@virginia.edu. Definitely send him an email if you're still having trouble getting into Teams. If you have any questions and you can't get into Teams, you can feel free to put them in the chat. But just wanted to clear that up front. Anything else? Yes, okay. Couple other things. So I mentioned this link in the training that is to a LearnR document. And this is going to be especially for undergrads who are, or anyone who's getting this training for the first time today. The LearnR document is this interactive app which has all the same content that I'm going to go over today. And in this document, you'll see exercises, the same set of exercises we'll go through today, but also some exercises for practicing Git both by yourself and with a team member. And those things, in the interest of time today, depending on how far we get, will likely be assigned as homework to do in your project teams. This link is in Teams. I will also share it in the chat really quickly right now. If you have any feedback on making this better, please let me know. But in the meantime, this is going to be where we're going to ask you to go and do some homework after the training today. The other thing I'll point out about this is that at the end of this, there are some links to external Git resources for you to spend more time learning about Git. And especially, I would recommend for those of you who have received a DataCamp subscription through UVA, highly, highly encourage you to take the Introduction to Git for Data Science training listed there as the first one. It is long, but it is really helpful and very thorough. All right, before I get into the actual training, I just want to sort of give everyone a minute or two to go ahead into Ravana. I can put this link in the chat as well, and if you can go ahead and request a session, probably, I don't know, maybe 2 hours, and you don't need a whole lot, probably 1 core. I think the minimum for gigabytes is 6. Go ahead and put that request in anytime in the next 15 minutes. We found last week there was sometimes having 50 people request at once was an issue. So maybe just stagger a bit between yourselves. I'm sure we'll figure it out. Okay, and so with that, I'll actually get into the training, unless there are any questions about anything I talked about so far as Teams, Ravana, the interactive knot module. LinkedIn Learning and Linda, I don't believe we have here. No, I think it's just DataCamp, unfortunately. All right, I'll keep an eye out, but in the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead. Yes, on Ravana. So go ahead and it'll be the interactive apps drop down, our studio. 2 hours should be good. 1 core, 6 gigabytes. And make sure for allocation you're putting down BII SDAD DSPG underscore. Here, I'll write that down. For the allocation should say BII underscore SDAD underscore DSPG, 2 hours, 1 core, 6 GB, I believe is the minimum for memory you can request. And yes, thank you, Baiwan. R version 4. All right, and so with that, we can go ahead and actually get started. Okay, so hello and welcome to what is usually everyone's least favorite training of the summer. I'd like to say it was an intentional hazing process and we just really like to dump you in it day one. But really, it's such a crucial skill and it's worth it being the first thing just because it will be something you use all summer for everything that you learn over the next couple weeks. And also just with this, repetition and practice are always good. So just so you know, if you're feeling pain today, I'm so sorry, but it will get better. And yeah. So for today, we're going to talk about a little bit about the background of Git, and then we'll spend some time actually setting up Git in our Ravana instance. And then I will, time depending, probably go through the Git workflow by yourself and also how to collaborate with Git. But again, I'm going to ask, especially undergrads, please go to your graduate student fellows, and also every university has a appointed Git lead. If you don't know who that is, I will include that in my follow-up email after this, who will be able to help you with some of these questions. Okay, so if you've never heard of Git, actually, let's maybe do a quick pulse check around the room. Go ahead and, I don't know, raise your hand or give me a thumbs up if you have heard of Git, and if you have a GitHub account, and give me a thumbs down if you do not have a GitHub account and maybe never heard of this before. See a couple thumbs up, see one thumbs down. Two thumbs down, couple thumbs up. Okay. All right. And I think some of you were in last week's training too, so hopefully some of you have at least heard this before. But so Git is a version control system. It was developed by Linus Torvalds, who also invented the Linux operating system. Linus claims he named both things after himself, so he has a bit of a sense of humor about it. He has allegedly given a number of meanings for what Git actually stands for. And to be honest, especially on that last bullet point, he is 100% right that your attitude towards Git really depends on your day and your mood. And just for myself, to make this GIF applicable to this talk and not totally self-indulgent, as the Weasley twins would say, it would really be terrible if your code was stuck as one thing forever. And Git is a tool that allows you to make changes to your code and save your code history in a sustainable way. So I mentioned that Git is a version control system. And so you can imagine the time before Google Drive and OneDrive where you couldn't have multiple people writing to the same document simultaneously. If you had a group project, what would happen is that each person would make edits to a document and then share out the versions as separate documents. And there was, as Joel noted, fun and ever-changing naming conventions as to how you would sort of denote what version of the document you were on. So Git is a tool that sort of helps us deal with this. I know people talk about there maybe being a Google Doc version, a version of Google Doc for code, but there, as far as I know, there isn't really a good version of that now, and you may not really want one. And the reason for that is that if you wouldn't necessarily want any user to overwrite any other user's code at any time, because one, you might potentially lose important chunks of code, and two, you might not be able to anticipate how new code plays with old code. So Git kind of helps you manage different versions of that code over time and make sure that it gives you the ability to sort of go back in time to different versions and restore old versions and manage who is allowed to actually make changes to the code. And so how does it work? So Git works by saving information in one of two places. And so first is the place that you're familiar with. It's the project directory. And that is exactly what you think it is. It is the project folder. So hopefully you've all seen RStudio before, but very likely what you're used to is seeing your project folder in that files pane on the bottom right corner of RStudio. And in that corner, you're going to see all of the files and folders and code that is associated with your project, right? And I will say, I'll just shout this out right now. Here in, I think I mentioned this also in the intro to platforms talk, but typically here in SDAD, we follow this sort of convention of having some preset folders. We usually use a source folder for code, output for files and figures, functions for our functions, and then a data folder for all of our data sets. So this project directory is going to be all of the things, all of the project materials in your project, and not just that single folder. The other piece that Git works with is something called a Git directory. And the Git directory is a directory of information that sort of monitors all the differences between the current version of this project directory, of this project folder, and the last version that it knows about. And so what's interesting is you can't actually see the Git directory here. It's actually an invisible file. And so what happens is when you go into the command line and you go into terminal, which we will do today, you can actually use this command ls-a to sort of show hidden things. And this, this .git file is actually our Git directory. So that's the thing that's actually tracking those version changes. To be clear, you will never touch this. You will never touch the .git file. You should never touch the .git file. I'm only telling you this so you know this for yourself and for your own edification, but you'll never actually touch that. And all you need to know is that that's where it stores the information, and it does that on behalf of an entire project folder at a time. And so what happens? So as people on a team are working together, so in this little example, Gizem, Taya, and I from SDAD, UVA are all working on a project. The various versions of the code get pushed up to GitHub, to a central place, an online repository of repositories. There's a lot of things you can do in GitHub, but the nice thing is that by having this external website that we can all visit and all look at, we can sort of all see what Gizem's working on, what Taya's working on, what I'm working on, and then make decisions about when and where to combine our code in a smart way. And the really nice thing is that it will actually help you compare versions of code over time. So you can actually see, in this example, let's say I am looking at an old version of my code, but I've written a new version of that same function. And you can see back in time when I had just started writing it, and it's just barely got like a line in there. But maybe a week later, I've really expanded it and it's become a little bit more mature. It's got a for loop in there. And now when I go to look at my two different versions in GitHub, GitHub will actually show me the changes in my code line for line, which is really, really nice. So the other thing I will mention is where we are doing Git. And this actually did come up quite a bit last week. So we do Git, and today's tutorial is going to be all at the command line. And so what that means is that when you're in our studio on either your personal laptop, but more likely for the summer in Ravana, you'll be going into the bottom left-hand pane. And in that pane, it will default to the console view. And the console view works in R. What we want is the terminal pane. So you'll have to toggle over from console into terminal, and terminal will be where you can enter the Git commands to actually save versions of your code. Yeah, and I think that's all I have on that. One last thing, for just, again, about Git in general, and specifically our conventions as to how we like to run Git and where we found success. And this will definitely be expected for UVA fellows. For other universities, we've definitely encouraged this. It's worked really well for us, but we like to have one person sort of be the maintainer for each repository. And for the course of DSPG, we do have the expectations that graduate students are going to be the maintainers of the repository on Git. And so what that means is typically what the workflow throughout the week will look like is, Mondays and Tuesdays is typically where we see a lot of project meetings. You know, Wednesday, Thursday, people start to like work, do some coding, you know, actually start writing things down into their Ravana sessions. And Friday, we all meet as a group, as project teams, and actually go through what we call documentation day, but specifically it's like an hour or two of office hours where we all meet as a group. Individual project teams review their code, review all the versions that they have, make sure that everything looks clean, looks documented, that it makes sense, there isn't anything repetitive or too clunky. In the beginning, this will probably be pretty, what's the word? I mean, in the beginning, we try to have people segment their work in such a way that this is a fairly light process and it's more about practicing. But as the summer goes on, this process will become more and more important because you'll really want to make sure you have a good understanding of what everyone on the team is doing and how it will come together in the end. So I'm going to pause there and just make sure I don't have any questions in the chat. Is everything I'm saying making sense? Any questions about anything I talked about so far? Feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself if you would like. If you don't have questions yet, don't worry, they're coming. I'm sure they are. Okay, cool. So now let's go ahead and actually get into setup. So what we're going to do here in the next phase of this training is actually set up Git in Ravana. And specifically, we're going to do a couple things. One, we're going to make sure we have Git installed, but we're also going to set up what's called an SSH connection to GitHub. What I will say is this, if you don't have a GitHub account yet, I will strongly say that you need to create one. Don't worry, I'll hold like 5 minutes for everyone to do that. But you will need a GitHub account in order to do this next activity, and you will need one over the course of the summer. So yeah, so with that said, let's do two things. Before we get into this, I cannot, hello. There we go. How do okay. So before we get into the actual exercise, I want to make sure I give everyone, let's say, I don't know, 2 to 5 minutes for two things. One, I want to make sure everyone has a Ravana session. And two, I want to make sure everybody has a account on GitHub. And if you're going to GitHub, it's literally just github.com. You can register for an account. It's free. And yeah, if you can do that, the only thing I'll caution you when you sign up with the email, I think, guys, Baiwan, Neil, I think it doesn't really matter if it's your Virginia email, does it? It can be any email. It can be your regular institutional email or a personal email, I believe.
Yeah, GitHub will do is it will have one identity or one profile or account, and then you can verify and link different emails. So every action in Git is a Git actor, which is identified by their email. So in your GitHub account, you can sign in and have your Gmail or personal email as your primary email, and then just say, oh, by the way, my UBA or my institutional email is also mine. You can just add it there and verify it, and then it will just be linked to your GitHub profile.
There you go. So yeah, go ahead. I'm going to be, I'll give you guys 2-3 minutes, but we need a Ravana session and we need a GitHub account before we can go on to the next thing. If you have both, you can just go ahead and give me a thumbs up and say you're ready to move on, and then I'll check back in at 2:30, I guess. Given that I'm not seeing a whole lot of thumbs up right now, I will say I'm going to assume that you need one or the other, either a Ravana or a GitHub. For Ravana partition, I believe that's off the top of my head. It's just BII for Ravana partition. Could the process of linking our institutional emails to our DSPG ones be repeated? I'm not 100% sure I know what you mean by that. You can, I think what Baiwan was saying is that you can link multiple email accounts to your GitHub account. Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess I'm not sure what you mean by DSPG ones. If that answers your question, great. If it doesn't, feel free to unmute and ask.
Sorry, what I meant was how could you repeat the process of linking our GitHub accounts that's connected to our institutional emails with the ones we're using for the summer?
Oh, we're gonna link the linking of the Ravana, but I think for changing emails, it's literally just, you know, settings. I think you can just add more emails.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up, which is great. I do see some thumbs down. I'm hoping those thumbs downs are from the previous question. Now I see a new X. If you are stuck, are you getting stuck on the Ravana step or getting stuck on the GitHub step? All right, I'm gonna give folks one more minute. I'm not seeing too much in the chat. I do see some thumbs down. If you're having issues, looks like somebody's having issues with the BII SDAD DSPG allocation. Is anyone else having issues with that? Okay, if Sarah's the only one, then Biowan and Neil, if one of you could work with Sarah. And in the meantime, I'm gonna assume everyone else has a Ravana session and a GitHub account, which would be great. Okay. oh, so let me, actually, I'm sorry, let me toggle right back. So, so if you've got your session, hopefully you've hit the connect to RStudio server and you've got your RStudio session up. The first thing I'm going to have you do is make sure that in this bottom left console, bottom left pane, where it says console, that you're going to switch over to terminal. And ignore all the stuff that's showing up in my terminal. I think yours will probably be blank, unless you've already been using terminal. But and just as a reminder, the difference is that console is going to be R, and the terminal is going to be the command line. So here, here you're not actually going to be writing R code in terminal ever. You're going to be writing bash, and you're going to be writing git commands. So this is really what this is doing, is connecting to this sort of virtual Linux machine that is spinning up this RStudio container. So you're kind of going a little bit under the hood here, under and beyond RStudio. So this is definitely something, once you master Git, this is definitely something you should be putting on your resumes, putting on your LinkedIn, because it is a really cool, awesome skill to have. Okay, so now that hopefully everyone's in terminal, I am going to just go back to the presentation. And so I mentioned that the first thing we're going to do is check for our Git installation. And so the first thing you're going to do is make sure that you actually have Git installed. To do that, in the terminal window, you're going to write git space -- version. That's it. Once you hit enter, you'll see one of two things. You'll probably see Git version 2.17.1. If you see that, you're good. You have Git installed. No, you can collect $200, you can pass go. You shouldn't see Git is not recognized as an internal or external command, operable program, or batch file. If you see this, it means Git isn't installed and you'll need to install it. No one on this call should see that, because one, you're in Ravana and Git's already been installed. But I do like to include it here just because if you wanted to follow these instructions for installing Git on your hardware, on your actual laptops or your actual computers and those machines, this would be how you do it. You'd follow that link and that would take you to a place to actually install Git. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, if you are still having Ravana issues, I would either go to Teams or message in the chat Bayawan or Neil. They'll both be able to, and Bayawan's listed, his name comes up as Jose first, Jose Bayawan or Neil. Yep, so it should just start with, the line will start with bash $44 $. You will type in after that, and I can show you what that will look like, if that's helpful. So if you're in terminal in RStudio, it's just going to be a straight git -- version, just like that. And voila, I've got my Git version confirmed. Hopefully everybody got this back, or some version of this. It's okay if it says something else, but it should say Git version 2.17.1 because everybody's in Ravana. Okay. If I'm going too fast, please let me know, but I'm taking silence generally, other than Kyra and Sarah, but I think Sarah's good now. And Kyra, hopefully you're talking to Bayawan or Neil. Everybody already set up a GitHub account and is logged in, so that's great. So the next thing we're gonna do is check the Git setup. And we had some issues with this last week, so I can't quite remember. I think maybe this one is one of these. Yes, you can't run system, yeah, because we're in Ravana, so this is actually not a system that we administer, so I don't think any one of us can use that second command. Yes, so Kent, to your question, I'm guessing it typed in wrong. So just make sure you're doing git space and then 2 dashes. Yes, 2 dashes is key. Should look like that. Git space dash dash version. I'm gonna hover here just to make sure Kent gets the 2.17.1. Anybody else having issues with Git version? Kent's got it. All right, cool. All right. So just for yourselves, go ahead and try each of these 4. It's okay if system, I think system won't work, but I believe global and local should work. And when you do that, it should, it's just how you check your settings. But the next thing we're gonna do is actually go ahead and tell it something about ourselves. So the first thing we're gonna do is tell it what our name is. And we'll do that by using git config -- global user.name. Global's not working. Okay. That's okay for now. Yeah, for now, if these ones aren't working, it's really okay. It has to do with the fact that we're not administrators and we can't actually see some of those things. But the next step will work, so don't worry too much about it. So git config -- global user.name. And here, you can write really anything. It just should be something that you recognize as yourself. It can be your name, it can be your alias, can be, just nickname, can be anything that you would know is you. And so that when GitHub says, is this the right person? Is this you? You can say, yes, that's me. The second step is to repeat that command, but with user.email. And there you're going to enter the email that is on your GitHub account. So whatever email you used for your GitHub account is going to be the one that you use to set your email here. And so what you're doing is telling Git who you are and what your email is. And when you do that, you can then check to make sure that that setting was changed by running the same command without entering any information, essentially, git config -- global user.name. That should return your name. Same with email, should return your email. And I'll give people a minute on this one. Yes, so for Crystal's question, whatever your primary email, I guess, on your GitHub account is, and Baiwan is saying, he recommends using your institutional email for work. Yes, something should return. So when you go to the double check step and you're at git config -- global user.name, what should return is what you entered here, Devika Nair for me. And for user email, it should return for me, dnair@fnm.edu. Git config list. Git config list, I can't remember off the top of my head. Let me test it. Yeah, so for me, git config list does return quite a few things, but that's in part because I've got some settings configured. So you can see here, my username and user email are set up. Some other things that I think, some of this I'm not sure where it came from. It might be the Ravana administrators. This one looks like projects that I've set up specifically, which we'll do as an exercise, but both commands didn't return anything for me. So make sure you are using 2 dashes. Yeah, so Yeah, thank you, Andrew. List won't, list will probably not show anything. In the first step, it won't show anything because you haven't set anything up. But hopefully, hopefully after you configure your username and user email, at that point, you should see something under list. Make sure you are using double dashes here. If you're not using double dashes, it won't work. For the first one, I think you do need the quotes. The second one, you can or don't have to. I think it's optional for the second one. I could have also put quotes there, I think, but you don't need them. The first one, yes, I think is the answer, but Baiwan might know better. I think especially because I have a space in my name, or I included a space in my name, you need the quotes there. Thank you. Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. Baiwan or Neil, do you know if we're allowed to download custom global options such as studio color preferences? I'm not sure off the top of my head. I think I've been using the default ones under whatever the options are.
I'm pretty sure you can do RStudio modifications.
You can?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think I don't know which one of these I'm using. I guess Vibrant Ink is the one I'm using, but cool. Tomorrow night 80s. All right. Hopefully everyone's good. Speak up if you're still having issues at this point. All right. Oh, Simon can't run the commands. And Simon, did you try them with 2 dashes? Let me, and what I can do is, that was tomorrow's training. Okay, cool. Thanks, Baiwan. That's really weird. Neil or Baiwan, can you work with Simon? Oh yeah, that's a good point. Make sure you're in terminal. Yeah, if you type git anything in console, you'll get this error object git not found, which happens a lot. So make sure that you're in terminal. You'll probably see bash $4.4. So, okay, yep, he's in terminal. Yeah, Simon, would you mind just messaging Baiwan or Neil? Are you getting an error message, or it's just not going through? Okay, anyone other than Simon? You can see now why this takes a while. Okay, I'm gonna assume someone's working with Simon and no one else is having issues. And so I'm going to move on.
Yeah, I sent in a message.
Thank you. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is check to see if we have any SSH keys set up, which, spoiler alert, you shouldn't. And the way we're gonna do that is with that ls command that I kind of previewed in the earlier slides. And then I think that's showing as a single dash there. I I'm going to double check this. I think it's 1 dash. Yeah, it is 1 dash. So in this case, ls single dash 1 dash al tilde slash dot ssh. And what that will do is tell you if you have any SSH keys set up. Spoiler alert, hope most of you have not set up SSH keys unless you're attending this training for the second time. So this should return nothing. So what we're going to do to actually generate the SSH keys is use this next command here. It's here. Oh, haha. Wouldn't it be nice if I was sharing the right screen? Apologies. I'm so sorry about that. Here we go. Hopefully you can see the slide. Yes, so it's written right here under step 2D. It's ls single dash al tilde slash dot ssh. And I can actually, it might even be helpful if I just write it in the chat, wouldn't it? The problem is it keeps auto capitalizing the first letter, which is really annoying. Okay. Dot ssh. And yep, that's good, Grant. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, yeah, I think they're not the keys that we need. They're probably keys set up for something else. Yeah, okay. Go ahead and ignore. If you have 12 keys, yeah, I think mine says 32. I didn't set up one, typing one. Having existing keys is fine. You have 8. Okay, if you have keys, go ahead and ignore them. Andrew, you could try refreshing the page. Refreshing a Ravana session will actually just reload it. It won't reset anything on your actual page. For the unknown option, I'm guessing it's not typed in correctly. So I'll just write it again. It's ls space single dash al tilde slash dot ssh. I'm guessing some of those keys are for the administrators to send information back and forth. No, ignore what I said earlier about there being nothing there. Apparently there's stuff there. Ignore it. What's more important is that there's not an SSH key for you specifically to authenticate yourself to your own GitHub account. So to do that, the next thing you're going to do is actually generate the key. And here, this has actually even changed since I taught this last year. There are some new recommendations as to how complex the SSH keys you generate should be. And remembering that this is like your authentication credentials, so this is how it knows it's you. So you want those to be long enough to actually make sure that it's actually protecting your identity. Oh yeah, okay. Somebody said refreshing the browser helped them with the, I'm assuming that was with the typing issue that was happening. So what you're gonna do is type this command. It's ssh-keygen-t RSA-B 4096 to specify the complexity of the key, -C, and then again, whatever email address is associated with your GitHub account. What will happen next is it'll prompt you to enter a file and enter a passphrase. Just hit enter twice. Just make sure they're all, or 3 times I think altogether. Just make sure you leave those just totally blank and empty. What will happen, the email is in quotes, yes. Not sure that's strictly necessary, but I know it works that way, so. What it's asking for when you do that is, you know, where do you want to store the SSH keys? And by just hitting enter without specifying a place, it just sets it to the default location so that you can use that generic command up top to find it. You also don't want to really use a passphrase here. It really makes life easier to not have to remember a passphrase. So recommend just leaving that blank and moving on with your life. There is an htop command, I think, but I don't have it on hand. That's something I'd have to dig into email for. And it's a little bit complicated, I think, because yeah, I think they have like their own custom command for that because you're dealing with a container. I'm not sure about the bad escape character. Maybe it might be helpful for me to write the command in here. So just to account for any spelling errors or anything. And then yes, when it asks you to enter the passphrase again, just hit enter. So yeah, but Sala, yeah, okay, yeah. Hopefully with that command pasted in there, that'll help. Thanks, by one. Yeah, I don't fully understand that sentence because I am not that technical, but there is something complicated about like these containers spin up and they're temporary, and so we're not really admins, we're just users. I don't think we can do too much about looking at the load and all that stuff. After you hit enter the last time, the cursor stays in the same place. Maybe try hitting enter one more time. You got a, let's see. Huh, okay. That's weird. Okay, if that's not working, I do have a backup one that's from my old slides. Give me 1 second. Apologies, I'm gonna have to pull that up. It's just SSH-keygen by itself should also work. Passphrase you're gonna leave empty. If the command I sent is not working for you, you can also just write this. That should also work. Okay, sorry, I think I lost some stuff. Yes, you should get a random art image thing after. It will look a little crazy. Okay, hopefully this is now sharing the right screen. Okay. Yes, the art image is good, if you got that. Is everyone at that step? Oh man, key pair. I want to check 1 second. It's been a minute since I did it that way. Okay. No, that's weird. I don't know what the key pair is. Also a file. Yeah, if it's asking for the file, just hit enter. And when it asks for the passphrase, also just hit enter. Okay. Did everyone get the pretty random art imagey thing? Hopefully, yes. Okay. Cool. You'll only have to do this once if it's ever any consolation, this particular thing, you'll only have to do once. Okay, so what you just generated was the SSH key. And so now what you need to do is copy that key and save it somewhere safe. So I think this is, I need to update this. The cat command that I'm referencing here in step 2F. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, let me share that real quick. After you, apologies, after you after you do ls-al, the last step, confirming that you have the keys, you should see something that says, like you should see some files that end in ID_RSA. Don't share your art image, just FYI, security, no bueno. I think that's not a thing that you're supposed to do. So it's okay that you did it. Nobody else here cares, but just in general, don't do that. I actually did it last week. I think I actually shared my entire SSH key with the class and recorded it, and now it's in the recording, so I'm gonna have to reset my keys at some point. But just a thing not to do. Okay, so what I can do is show you what it looks like when you do confirm that you have those keys. So for me, so I've gone ahead and I've typed, I can make this bigger also, I think that would be helpful. When I type ls-al, SSH, whatever, what you'll see is this underneath, and these are, I believe, the actual SSH keys. And what you're gonna do with the next step is actually copy that key by using the cat and then the actual file location of where it's stored. And I will go ahead and just write this in because I think that will help everybody. What that will do, so ignore what it says. It doesn't actually copy the key to your clipboard, the cat command. It will show you the SSH key. You need to copy that whole string and save it somewhere safe. That's right. Okay. Once you've saved it somewhere safe, maybe it's like a text file that you save to your desktop, or maybe you've got a folder for important passwords and things. Maybe ideally you use LastPass or 1Password or some other tool for, safe holding all your private information. Wherever you put it somewhere where you will remember where it is. But the other place you're going to put it is actually into your GitHub account. And this is why you need to make sure you have a GitHub account for this, because what you're going to do is go into settings. When you go up into GitHub, you'll go to your profile icon in the upper right-hand corner. And in that drop-down, you'll see the settings option. When you go to settings, there'll be an option to go into SSH and GPG keys. You'll select new SSH key and paste your key into that text field. I would give it a name that you'll remember what it's for. Yes, you do need to copy all the way, including the email. Copy everything. And that name should be something like, BII, Ravana, I don't know, DSPG, something that will help you remember where it's connecting, that particular key connects to. So when you enter this command, the cat command, it should print out your SSH key. And so that long string that you see there is what you're going to be copying. Yeah, I believe it is the same email. It should be the same email. Yeah, I wouldn't know how it would even know about another email unless, well, no, I don't know. I think it should be the same email. Yeah. And once, yeah, so when you click into that SSH and GPG keys, you're gonna hit new SSH key. You don't need a GPG key, just new SSH key. And you're gonna paste the key into that big text field, and you'll give the key a name. I would recommend something like DSPG Ravana, something like that, so that you remember what that key is connecting your account to. Yeah, so after you return, yep. Oh, you can't copy via Control-C. That is weird. Give me a second. Let me try it myself. Because I think the last time I did this, I could use Control-C, but sometimes Ravana is annoying. Okay, so that's, no, that's weird. Control-C is working for me. Maybe it's a Chrome thing. I'm not sure, but I am able to select everything from SSH to my email, copy it, and then paste it somewhere else with the Control-C. It keeps entering like you're typing C. That is really weird. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to keep up. Okay, so Vikram says that if you're not able to copy with Control-C, you may be able to right-click and hit copy. Yes, you can edit the SSH title in GitHub. Oh, guys, do not, yeah, that is right, Kent, but do not put your SSH key in the chat, guys. Security best practices, do not share your SSH key, which is why I'm not sharing screen for this step. Okay, okay, so after you get the random art image, we haven't moved forward yet. We're still on the same slide. So Ian, you can go straight to this cat step. And I've put it somewhere in the chat. I typed out the command, but it's cat tilde/ssh/idrsa pub. That command is what you're going to do next. And then you're going to go into GitHub and follow these steps to connect that SSH key into your account. The other thing, in addition to pasting it here, Ian, just make sure that you paste it, you save it somewhere safely. It'll be a long, ugly string that prints out from that command. Just make sure you save it somewhere locally on your computer, that you remember where it is, and then also add it to your GitHub account using these steps. Firefox, it seems, yeah, if you're, Firefox C does not seem to work. If you're on a Mac, it's Command C. Highlight and right click, not working. Right click, not working. You can find settings in GitHub, like as the picture shows, if you're signed in, you go to the upper right-hand side, and once you click on the drop-down under your icon, that drop-down will have settings. Best practices for naming keys. Name it something that you're gonna remember what that connection is. So for this case, the connection is to the Ravana server, but let's say you were setting up a connection on your laptop. I, in the past, have had to, well, I've had a couple like computers at a time. So I had a work computer and I had a personal computer. And so what I did was, you know, I made sure that I named the keys something that reminded me which connection was which. So, you know, maybe my work ThinkPad versus MacBook personal or something like that. You just want to remember where it's connecting to so that if any issues arise, you can make sure you're troubleshooting the right connection. Yeah, I think you do include the SSH RSA at the end, at the beginning, I'm sorry. You're not able to copy Firefox. It doesn't have the options. The screenshot shows still can't find. Okay, so the copying thing, I'm not sure what's going on there. But at least for settings, I'm sorry, it doesn't look like it actually works like that anymore. If you go under profile and then settings, it's just actually SSH and GPG. There doesn't seem to be, oh no, it is the same, right? I did settings and then GPG. So yeah, so once you're here, and also I shouldn't be showing this, but that's fine. I'll fix it later. But this actually kind of helps answer Chase your question as well. You know, I realized at a certain point I needed to write in the dates of when I was connecting to Ravana because I needed to know what was the old connection. I should have probably just deleted it. And what was the new connection, but I've also got various connections to old computers that I had at different points. But this is where you're going to go. And then you're going to hit new SSH key, give it a title, paste in your key here. And yeah, actually in the grayed out font, it does tell you it should begin with SSH-RSA. Yeah, I guess if Firefox isn't letting you copy, I would, I guess, recommend using Chrome. I hate to tell you to switch. Oh, it does if you use Control Insert. That's really weird. Okay, but good to know. I'm going to write that down and add it to my slides for next year. We had a lot of trouble with Ravana and typing into terminal last summer, which, you know, not fun. Okay, and I'm not supposed to share that, so I'm gonna stop sharing there. Go back up to the slides. All the security best practices. I'm giving Neil and Biowan a heart attack, I'm sure. I think the insert Andrew's talking about is the, it's usually, if you're looking at a keyboard, you know, it would be like you'd have the toggle arrows, the up, down, left, right, and then insert is one of the 6 along the above the toggle arrows. But I think on a laptop it might be like one of the top row of extra keys. Yeah, and Neil is saying it's near delete. Joel is saying it's near delete for him. It is probably labeled INS. Yeah, for SSH-T, when you're testing the connection manually, so you are just going to explicitly write git@github.com, and you will not see this message. So what it will say, and I apologize, this is outdated, but what it will say instead is, you know, can't verify the authenticity or something like that, and then it'll give you a fingerprint. And if the fingerprint starts with, oh my God, it like literally won't let me have like 2 PowerPoints open at once, which is really, really irritating. I'm sorry. Yeah, anyway, so if you see 2 fingerprints and one of them's like kind of long, yeah, then you're probably looking at the right thing. For me, and I'm sorry, I think what happened was this is the message it gives you the second time you do it. But the very first time you're setting up an SSH connection, it should say something like authenticity can't be verified, and then fingerprint. The email that you write there should exactly be git@github.com. It should not be your username at github.com. Yeah, Andrew, if you're, yeah, if you guys are getting an error message, all right, so if you're saying the verification failed, does it have a fingerprint underneath it? Like a fingerprint key? Yes, so if it has the fingerprint key, then you are good. As long as it has a fingerprint there. I mean, and you can even copy and paste the fingerprint in here. I apologize. I have it on an old version of the slides what the fingerprint should look like, but it's very likely that it's the right fingerprint. And in fact, I might be able to find it online. Yeah, here it is actually. Let me find it. Let me share this. Yep, so if you are getting one of these, and it looks like I saw the SHA 256 in there, yep, then that looks good. And you got permission denied. Huh, that's not good. Did you, Banaz, are you seeing a fingerprint key? Permission denied is...
Yes.
You are getting a fingerprint? Okay. If you got...
Yeah, and it says that like yes or no, like please type yes or no. Are you sure you wanted to?
Yes, you can go ahead and say yes on
I
that.
I did say yes, and then it said that like permission denied.
Oh, after that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I got a warning. It said that permanently added github.com to the list of known hosts, and then permission denied.
Okay, it said, is there any chance when you did this step, the SSH-T, that you didn't write exactly git at github.com? Let me.
I got that right. Git
It should say git at
github.com.
github.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's weird.
That's what I typed. Let me see.
Okay.
Oh no, sorry.
No, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I typed this.
You typed this, yeah. Yeah, that looks right. Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. I don't know if Neil or Bayawan, is that something that we need to like follow up on offline, or is that something you think we can troubleshoot now?
We will find out whether it's an issue once we start cloning.
Once we start cloning? Okay, that's true. Okay.
We'll test it, actually
Okay.
test it. But yes, if you try to SSH test to GitHub, it should give you something about like it doesn't have, or it doesn't provide SSH terminal, and that's completely fine. So.
Thanks.
Okay.
Basically,
so I guess,
if you have issues when you try to clone, then that's when we can try and step in and see if there are issues.
Okay. All right, thanks guys. Okay, so good news. Hopefully, assuming everything went well, you will not need to do this again unless you want to on your personal machine. Yeah, for the course of the summer, you shouldn't need to do this again, as long as everything just worked perfectly. What we're gonna do next is practice cloning, which Bayawan and Neil just mentioned. And what that means is essentially starting to actually use Git and work with Git. And the first thing really is to actually start looking at a project repository or project directory, as I mentioned, a folder of project materials, and start to bring that into your environment. So let's, for the sake of time, do this one instead. I know it's labeled homework, but let's go ahead and do this one first. So what I'm gonna ask everyone to do in the next few minutes is, go into GitHub, and when you go to your profile page, or even when you're on the home page, even if you're just in GitHub home, github.com just by itself, but you're logged in, you'll see this new button next to repositories. And I'm gonna ask you to create a personal project on GitHub. And for that, what you're gonna do is write in, you can call it test, you can call it example, I don't really care. It's just, random personal empty project that's gonna be on your profile. You can delete it later. You don't really need to give it a description. Keep it public and initialize it with a README, and then go ahead and just add a git ignore. I would say you can add the R1, and then you can go ahead and create the repository. Once you create the repository, what you'll find is that project will be created on your repositories page of your profile. And if you navigate to it, it will be pretty empty. It'll probably just have the git ignore and the README file on the main page. But what you're gonna do is go ahead and grab this link here. If you hit the green button for clone or download, make sure this says clone with SSH, and grab this link. what you're going to do next, and this is all written on the slide, is you'll not share your SSH key. What you'll do is write git, I'm sorry, before you do this, I should add this to the slides. What you'll do is when you're in RStudio and you're in files, you're gonna go to home and hit new folder, and you need to create a new folder called Git. I already have one, but once you have one, you can click into it and make sure that you, should I do this? How do we do this? Go into terminal and hit print working directory, and it will probably put you in your homes, which will look like this. It will probably say something like qhome / whatever your username is, and you can get that with hitting pwd. What you want to do is change your working directory into that Git folder you just created. So to do that, you're going to hit cd, which stands for change directory, and then type in Git, the name of that new folder. And now when you hit print working directory, it should tell you you're in that folder. The next thing you're going to do after that is git clone, and then type in and paste in the link that you grabbed from here, from your project page. It'll be that SSH link from the clone or download button. That's what you're going to paste in here. Why don't I'm going to update the slides real quick to make sure these instructions are in there. But if you want to go ahead and start creating your project, again, you can do that by going to the GitHub homepage, hitting new, and then you can go ahead and create a project right there. And while you guys do that, I'm going to update the slides to have the next steps written out a little better. Okay, and now these should now reflect the right instructions. So create a folder in your home directory called Git, set that to your working directory. These are the commands to do that. Okay, so before you cd Git, you need to make sure you've created the folder first. To create the folder, you go to that files pane on the right and hit, make sure you're in your home directory. It should say home next to the little house icon. Right above that house icon is the new folder. Hit new folder, write Git, hit enter, and now you should have a Git folder. Yeah, so I can show this again. So once you have your project, so you are going to grab that link. You're going to go into RStudio under Files. Make sure you're in Home. So next to the little Home button, Home, it should just say House Home. And then hit New Folder, write in Git. That should create a Git folder there. Now, when you go back into terminal, you're going to print working directory. It should say something like this path, your qhome/dtn2ep, whatever your username is at Virginia. Then you can write cd git because you've already created
Your
it.
screen is black.
Oh, that's not helpful. Okay, apologies. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, apologies. So, so let me just to backtrack a bit. Once you've created your project and you can grab that SSH link, you're going to go back into RStudio. Make sure on the right-hand files pane, you're in home when you hit new folder right above it. You can use that new folder to create a project called, create a folder called Git, and then it will create that Git folder in your home directory. When you go back into terminal is where you can print working directory, which it should look like this, something like sfs qmolo qhome, I think. As long as it ends in like home and then your username at Virginia, that's good. If it just says home, that's good, that's fine. From there, you can say cd git. And now when you print working directory pwd, at this point, we haven't, at the point that I'm describing, all you're doing is navigating into a folder where you are going to be cloning your projects and repositories. So this is just going to be a place where you can put all of your repos. So like you can see here in my home directory is a bit of a mess. Do not as I do, but do as I say. But in my Git folder, this is all of the repos I'm working with. So these are the actual project folders that I'm working with. And I do that just so that for my own sanity that I don't have to think too much about it. Okay. Okay, so for those that are getting like cd git isn't working, do you guys have a Git folder in home? As long as you've, okay. Try this. If you're in the home directory, try, after you do pwd, try ls. And for me, it'll look like this because it's a mess. When you hit ls just by itself, so here's where I wrote ls up here in the top, and then here I can see my Git folder. When you do ls, you should have, Git should show up in what's printed back.
Sorry, I have a question. Is it possible to do file new project to create the clone?
Yes, but before you clone the project, you want to make sure you have a folder where you're going to be putting all those projects. So I wanted to do the hard example first,
Okay.
just because that's the one we may only have time for to do all in person. And then what I'll do is demo the easy one. Okay, so if the only thing that shows up is your username when you do ls, that probably means you need to navigate down into that. So let's say you ls and all you get is your username. I would write cd and then whatever your username is. I would ls again once you do that, and then now you should have Git, if that makes sense. So for Katie and anyone else, if the only thing that shows up is your username, cd your username, whatever shows up there, ls again, now Git should show up, and then cd into Git from there. Great. Once you print working directory and it says that you're in Git, now you can go ahead and do the Git clone step where you write literally Git clone and then paste in that link that you copied from your project page. And it'll probably do, it might be really fast. It might take a minute to say like loading some materials back and forth. But then what you should see when you go to that Git folder here is you should see whatever you named your project as a folder, and that folder will just have probably the git ignore and the readme. And the other thing it'll do, it may or may not do, is create an rproj file, and that is a-okay if it does that. So apologies, it's on the slide, not the page I'm showing you. So it looks like this at the bottom. It's step 3C, git clone, git@github.com. It's whatever the link was that you copied from the repo. So git clone is the command, and then everything in that second line there, that is the URL, the SSH URL that I copied using that green button on my repo page. All right. Once everyone's done with this step, that will be it for the torture part, and I'm gonna go back into lecture mode so that we can get through the rest of the materials in about 25 minutes. Your project should be in the Git folder when it's done, yes. I have not heard of Opera. I don't know. I know Neil uses another browser, I can't remember, Ecosia or something, maybe, but I don't know if he uses that.
Opera should be fine. Opera should work.
Should work, okay. Let us know if it doesn't. I guess we're gonna learn with you guys because we haven't had this many people all in Ravana before, so it's really exciting.
Also, if people are not using Chrome because of privacy issues, I'm very impressed. That's actually very cool.
On the same call that some of us have inadvertently shared our SSH keys. It's fine. All right. I'm hoping that went well for everyone. Hopefully you have a Git folder, you have your project in there, and all I'm gonna do very, very quickly is just demo what the other exercise looks like really quick. And I can't remember, somebody had just asked about it, but the other easy, fast way to do this, and the way that I did not let you do because it's easier, and yeah, I just really want to torture you guys. But the easy way to do it is to go to File, New Project. You go to Version Control, Git, the same link you just used to clone. You can paste it here. I don't have it copied to clipboard right now, but you would paste it here. You hit Tab, it would auto-populate the project name here. You just need to make sure that this is set to Git for where it actually creates it, and you can hit Create Project. That does the exact same thing, and that's something I'm gonna ask you guys to practice with your project teams as homework for today, because we don't have time to cover that. And also it gives you an excuse to practice with your team, which is even better. Everything we talked about was, for the most part, set up. We haven't talked about how to use Git. And unfortunately, I'm gonna have to try to do this pretty quickly. So what I'm gonna do is rant for hopefully 15-20 minutes. I'll stay after and take questions, but this is gonna be the part where I'm gonna have to move fast and make sure that everybody gets this information. So I'll try to take questions throughout, but I may wait till the end just to make sure I can get through everything. Awesome. That's great, Andrew. Okay, cool. So the way I'm going to cover this is to first talk about how you use Git by yourself, and then I'm going to talk about how to use Git with others. And when you take this away, you're going to have 2 exercises where you're going to practice first by yourself, and then you're going to practice with someone else, probably someone on your project team. So hopefully everyone here has coded at some point before. I know there is a lot of different levels of experience with coding in general, but typically, you know, you're going to open up RStudio, you're going to go into a script, and you're going to write your code, and that's always going to be your first step. And here in push is really like, that's going to be your bread and butter for the workflow when you're working by yourself. These other two things are branching and merging are going to be there as collaboration tools. So what does this look like? So first thing, you're writing your code, you're in a script. Sometimes you're running lines one at a time. The output comes to console. And sometimes the variables you're creating are getting stored in the global environment up here. And you're just going to go, this stage is just you doing your normal workflow. And normally, if you've been working by yourself or just doing this in school, you haven't had to necessarily worry about other people. But now you're at a point where, you know, you've done enough, you've gotten this really great script or a really great series of scripts for your project, and you want to share this with the team. So how do you do this? Or you just want to share it on your page so that other people can see it. The first thing you're going to do, and you can see here that I have console up as my tab in the first part. On the next slide, I've switched over to terminal. And so the first thing I'm going to do is hit get status, or write in get status. And what that's going to do is tell me what I have modified, or what files have been modified since the last version of this project folder that Git knows about. So in this example, you know, the last version that Git had looked at, there is one major difference. That major difference is to this technical document. And it said, hey, this looks modified. And the next thing I'm going to do is say, at this point, Git has not decided to track anything. All it's doing at this point is telling me that something changed in this file, and it's on me to tell Git I want it to track changes now. And so to do that, we call that staging code. And the command for that, very simple, git add is the command, and I use the period. What the period does is it's sort of just stands for all. So if you say git add period, what that means is you are staging every file that was changed. So in this case, I only have one, but let's say I had 15 scripts that I had modified since the last time I had talked to Git. Then in that case, the period's really helpful because I can just say, I want you to track everything I've changed. Sometimes people, you know, work a little differently, and they, you know, they want to only track one script at a time. Maybe they came up with a script, but they don't want to track it. It was just scratch paper. The other thing you can do is git add and then use the entire file path, source, burning glass validation, bdt.rmd, and you can put that in place of the period if you only want to stage one file at a time. I just find it easier to use the period, so that's what I do. The next thing you're going to do is commit. So in the last step, you started staging code. So Git said, I'm now officially tracking changes to these files, this set of files. When you commit, what you're doing is actually, that's a save point, essentially. If you're, I think in gaming, it's called like a save point, right? But essentially what you're doing is bundling all of the changes that happened to those files into a single, what's called a commit hash. And you can see the commit hash here. A27D8FA is the commit hash, and that's an identifier for this code at this point in time. And when I committed it, I used the git commit command. And then I also added in a message, and this is something we ask, you know, everyone to do, but all you have to do is a single -m and some quick comment that conveys what that bundle of changes is about. When I hit enter, I can see that commit hash was generated. I can see my message printed out again, and I can see a summary of the changes that were made. So one file was changed. In this case, what it's saying is one insertion, one deletion. Probably what happened was one line of code was modified, so it would consider that line was deleted and a new line replaced it, but essentially one line was edited. Essentially, the last thing I'm going to do here is push, and what that means is I'm now sending this commit up to GitHub, and what you'll do is, I think for the example you just write git push, you may need to write origin master. but it's written in the example, so you shouldn't need to worry about it. Ignore this password. The way I had set it up at this time, it was asking me for my GitHub password. Because you have successfully set up an SSH connection, you do not have to enter your credentials every time you push, which will save you time through the summer and just save your own mental frustration about things. But what you will see is everything else here: the counting objects, compression, writing objects, etc. All that's doing is telling you that it's sending information up to GitHub. And then it will come back with this really nice link that goes up to GitHub and goes to a merge request automatically. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but once you've gotten here, you have done the thing. And if you go up to GitHub, you will see the code reflected in your repository. And what that will look like is like this. So in this particular example, you can see here this 9 commits, and you can see there's all of the different time points that I sent code up from my computer up to GitHub. And if I needed to, the nice thing is I can always go back and restore any one of these versions of the code. And you can also see the commit hashes identifying that version of the code at that point in time, which is also really, really nice. Any questions about any of that? I think it was pretty straightforward, but let me know. The next part is where it gets a little bit more complicated. I don't think I see anything in the chat. Feel free to send more questions in if you need them. Okay. We're gonna ignore this for now. Okay. I'm going to, this slide will be in, it's definitely in the version of the slides that's in Teams now. I'll update that version so it has the changes I just made just now on the fly. But this is something I strongly recommend everyone just print this out. This is gonna be like your go-to guide for how you actually work through Git. It'll make a little bit more sense when I actually go through the next section, but I just wanted to call it out now. Okay, so for collaboration, this is all very similar, but we're now just going to build a little bit on what that Git workflow kind of looks like. And so we're introducing this idea of branches, and branches are how we actually get to that idea of versions of the code. And so what you'll see in a repository in general, in fact, on what you'll see in the projects you just created, is this master branch. If you look at that repo, I think in the left hand, there's like a little button and it probably says master. And what master is it's like the master version of the code, right? It's the cleanest, the nicest version. And unless you ever specify that you don't want to be in master, it will always default to master. What we use to collaborate with Git is called branches, right? So what we do is, you know, let's say we have the version of our project right now, but now we want to start working on it and adding code in. What we do is actually copy that version of the repo at that point in time and start to do development on a copy of master. And what that does is it helps us isolate the changes that we're making to the code so that we can talk to each other about what we're doing, make sure that our changes work together before we sort of combine versions. And you can start to see that even in this diagram that, you know, here the team made a development branch and then started making branches for features. This example is kind of based on like more traditional product development at a big company, where they would actually use these branches for doing features to a new product. So you might have even seen some things like when you're using your, let's say like iTunes or an app or something, and they say, what's in release X number, whatever. And it's a bundle of features. They probably used branches to develop those features and then bundled them into a development branch where they then pushed a new release of that product out. But all you really need to know is that branches are just copies that you're going to be working with in your team that will be undergoing the actual development. And master is going to represent like that final clean working version of the code that everybody will sort of publish at the end of the summer. And so what does that look like in terms of the actual practice of branches? So the way we use branches is we have each person on a branch, and we make sure that we give people tasks in such a way that people are sort of working on independent things. So in this example, let's say we were working on the business innovation project, and you knew that overall the goal of the project is to detect innovation in tech sources. So we have our 3 team members, Gizem, myself, and Taya. Gizem's task is to import journal articles, text data. My task is to articulate data structures and data types for the articles. And Taya's task is to import and clean FDA data for subsequent validation. And you can already see I'm teasing this up here, but each of us has our own separate branch that we're going to be working on. And what will happen is we'll each create a branch, and in general, we ask people to name their branches with their name or initials or something identifying them, and then something identifying the task that they're doing at that point in time. So you can see Gizem, Devika, Taya, but then also something about what they're working on. So Gizem and I are both working on Factiva, and Taya is working on FDA. And now you can start to see the scripts that we're working on. And you can kind of already see what's going to happen here maybe. Gizem's importing data, so she's using this import Factiva script and import Factiva's metadata script. I'm working on articulating the data structures and the types, and I am also working on that import Factiva script and a cleaning script. Taya's working on FDA, so her scripts are totally separate. So what Git and GitHub can kind of help with is tracking when there are conflicts and when people are making changes to the same scripts. So what would happen here is Taya's work, totally independent, not going to be a problem. Her scripts are separate. We don't have to worry about it. This cleaning Factiva script and the import Factiva script, import Factiva metadata script are also independent. They're going to be just fine. But depending on how Gizem and I communicate with each other as to how and when we are making changes to this import Factiva script, may or may not cause an issue with the code, right? So the best thing to do in general, what we have people do is, one, where possible, try to work on independent scripts and independent tasks as much as possible. Try to segment what you're doing in the project group as much as possible. Where you need to be working on the same script, try to have a handoff point and make sure you're talking to each other about that, right? So Gizem, I should not be working on that import Factiva script until Gizem is done with it and no longer making changes with it. And that way you can kind of start to make sure you're anticipating and accounting for any kind of conflicts in the code so that we're not pushing changes to each other's code and overwriting each other's code or causing conflicts. That would be a problem. So does that make sense? I want to make sure everything I just said makes sense because that's slightly important. Versions of the code, on branches, segmenting work, cool. Not seeing anything in chat right now, I think, but feel free to interrupt, say something. Okay, so how does this actually play out? So slight modification to what I just showed you. It's literally one step in the beginning. You're gonna do the same, the git status step. And what will happen is you'll now notice this on branch master step, and everybody will default to master to start with. If you were to hit git status right now in your projects, that's what it would show. And that's okay. But I will strongly urge you always, this is why I always have people start with the git status step, because I want you to always make sure that you are not on master. If you don't do this, and if you don't change your branch, what will happen is you'll start writing code to master instead of writing it to a branch. And that will be a problem if more than one person does it. It'll be a problem if you are trying to deal with code cleanliness later on. Just don't do it. Save yourself the hassle. If you see on branch master, immediately try to get out of master. And you can do that by using this command, git checkout -b, and then name your branch. In this case, you know, based on an example, you'll be doing this with a partner, so you'll probably give it your name and whatever, some kind of test branch thing. Once you do this, git checkout-b will automatically create the branch, and it will switch you onto this branch, which is really nice. So if you were to hit git status one more time, from there on out, you would be on branch, partner branch in this example. And so from there, you're gonna follow the same steps. You'll just start writing your code, then you're gonna push your code, and that's the steps you just went through, the git add, commit, and push. Once you've pushed, you'll go into GitHub, and this will be that Friday documentation day type exercise. You'll go into GitHub, look at those branches, and actually do a merge. And I'll just quickly show you what that looks like. And how much time do I have? My clock has disappeared on Mac. 3:46. Okay, I'm gonna try and get us out in 10 minutes, but I think I can do it. So what that will look like, let's say, do I have a branch on this? Yeah, sure. So let's say I'm in my repo and I've just pushed a change up there. Now I've got two branches, a trial branch and a partner branch. And what I'm gonna do, and these will be Fridays in general, I'll hit new pull request, and it'll ask me what branches I wanna compare. So typically what I wanna do is always start by merging partner branches together before you merge into master. So in this case, I'm gonna take partner branch and compare it to trial branch. And what that'll do is it'll first do a quick check for conflicts, and it'll tell me whether or not there's any conflicts between those two branches. And it'll also give me a summary of the changes. So it'll summarize the commits that are associated with these two branches, or well, with the one branch really. It might also tell me a little something about what code changed. And you can see the line by line there. And from there, yeah, I don't know. At this point, you haven't created it, but once you do create it, you'll actually have this page where you can talk to each other about the two branches. And you'll see all the same information you just saw before, but now this link is actually something you can actually all access. So what I could do, let's say I'm an undergrad and I create the pull request, and Neil is my graduate student on my project. I can say, hey, Neil, I don't know what Neil's, oh, he's not a contributor. So Alyssa Fowers, who is going to actually be giving a presentation at the end of the summer. She was a former DSPG alum. I can actually tag her, let's say she's my grad student. I can say, hey, just pushed, you know, a new branch, ready to merge. Take a look. Add that comment, and she can come in and take a look together. I would say this is something, the review process is something you guys should all do together. Make sure that your code makes sense, make sure there's no conflicts, make sure it's clean and documented and commented well. Yes, I can put that command in, but it will also be in the PowerPoint. So don't, and it's in that last slide. So don't worry about that too much just yet. It is git checkout -b and then name of branch, whatever that is, something like that. I'll show it to you, don't worry. So here, once you've actually done the review, you can actually hit merge pull request, and then you'll repeat this process, except the next time you do it, whatever your merge branch is, you'll be taking that merge branch, let's say you merged into trial branch, and you'll now do that against master. And don't worry, you don't need to figure this out right now. The main thing you'll need to practice is pushing, I think, though I think one of the examples has, one of the assignments has you also do a quick merge, but this will make more sense as you practice and as we have office hours week to week. So let me go back here into slides. You're not gonna do this now. yeah, so I just went through that, so you don't need to worry about that. Okay, so to Banaz's question, I think this is the last slide on the deck. So this handout now I think is super helpful, and I'll just speak through it real quick box by box, but essentially I'd consider 0 Monday and 11 Friday. And what will happen is whenever you come in Monday morning and you're ready to start working for the day, the first thing you're going to do is either make sure that your terminal command line is set to the location of the project that you're going to be working with. So the same way you just changed directory, you CD'd into Git, you'll CD into the project. To change directory up, you hit ... To change directory down, you just name the project. LS will tell you what you can CD into, and PWD is print working directory. Once you make sure you're in the right folder in terminal, from a terminal location, the next thing you'll do is actually make sure that your branch is up to date by pulling. You'll kind of have done this at the end of the week as well, but just to make sure. Then the next thing you'll do is actually check out the branch. And so this is the command you're looking for, Banaz, the git checkout-b branch name. Make sure it has like your name and something about what you're doing. From there, coding. You're coding Tuesday to Friday. And you can commit along the way. In general, I think what I've heard as the best advice is commit early and commit often, meaning the more code you write, just think about like, how pissed would I be if I lost this right now? So if you would be pissed to lose what you've done, just go ahead and commit it. Never ever gonna hurt. Don't need to be too paranoid about it if it's just 3 lines of code, but maybe if you've, got half a script working, or you remembered a package or something and you just figured out how something worked, definitely all good times to commit. And you can commit and push as many times as you want throughout the week. And what will happen at the end of the week, so this last box here is Friday. Friday, your team will meet and actually issue the pull request and review the code together, making sure that everything makes sense, there's no conflicts, everybody's working on different things, and those things work together the way they need to. And once you do that and you go ahead and finalize the merge request, you then are going to go, it will actually prompt you to delete. It'll give you the option to delete the branch in GitHub. You'll then, and you will, and so just so you know, the end of this process is deleting your branches that you were working on, because once you merge into master, your branches are now irrelevant. I'm trying to make sure how much I'm okay on time. Yeah, I'm running out a little bit over. Give me just 2 more minutes. As you're working on your branches, you're going to be making all these changes to the code so that by the time on Friday you're merging into master, this version of master now has all of your changes from your branch, right? So what you want to do is make sure that you delete this branch and pull down the new copy of master on Monday, so that on Monday, your code now has not only your changes that you made along the week, but also the changes other people made. So that Friday time point is going to represent that new combined integrated code base that has everybody's changes. And then you'll just repeat that process again. So from there, once you finalize the merge request, you will delete the branch in GitHub. You'll then go back into terminal, go back into our studio, go back and check out master. You'll pull master, so that's going to refresh your copy of master locally with the integrated version that you made on GitHub. You're then going to delete your branch locally, and then git fetch prune will actually clean up your branches in both places. And that will leave you in the perfect place to then come in on Monday morning and start that process right over again. Okay, so I think I'm seeing questions. That's pretty much all I have. I know there's only a few minutes left. I will be on as long as you guys need me, and I can take questions, but I will, again, recommend undergrads, please go ahead and go into the Learn Interactive module and then do some of those setup not the setup, but the practice Git exercises. Try to do that alone with yourself and with a partner, you know, from your project team. The grad students are a great resource to tap because they've already sat through this training once, so this will be their second time practicing it. And if you need the name of the person at your institution who is the designated Git contact, go ahead and email me. I'll put my email in here, and I will be happy to tell you who that is. And I'll just say I'll go ahead and take questions. If you need to jump off because you want to go to the 4 o'clock Mark Hansen, that's totally fine. I will send a follow-up email with all of the materials. Okay, so can you update a branch contents or add a file into an existing branch? Yes. So yes, you can. Well, so it depends on what your question is. Essentially, when you are in this box, the step 3, you can make all the changes you want to that branch as you're working on it. You can create new files, you can create new plots, you can create data sets, whatever you want to do. But the reason you need to delete the branch, you cannot reuse the same branch, is because you need to have that integrated version of master at the start of the next week. No problem, Joanna. Does that make sense, Atife? I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering your name. Yes, okay, cool. Any other questions? No problem. Cool, hopefully that made sense. No problem. Yes, I can put that in the chat. It'll also be in a follow-up email, and it's also on Teams in the trainings recordings folder. No problem, guys. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call that a day.